People tell me every day, love is gonna come my way, searching for clues that I hope to find. Want something that's gonna last. I wanna live and forget the past. I know this change is gonna do me good. I know this change is gonna do me good. Even though it hurts me now, I know this change will do me good. I'm wondering where the wind will blow. If you got a clue, then let me know. Don't hold back now. Give me a sign. Tell me something really good. Live your dreams, you know you should. I know this change is gonna do me good. I know this change is gonna do me good. Even though it hurts me now, I know this change will do me good. Everything changes in its own way, and I'm feeling better every day. And I'm gonna look back at all of this someday, and I'm gonna
Aloha. Good evening. This is Aloha live out of Flagstaff, Arizona, with Spiritual Links Productions on Blog Talk Radio and FreeConferencing.com and Ustream, establishing and maintaining right relationships through human value. Aloha and welcome to tonight's Aloha Live. Tonight we're here with Kathleen Marden, all the way. Now, I apologize, Kathleen. Where are you located at?
I'm in Florida.
Florida, okay, Florida. And Stanton Friedman, all the way out of Canada. Aloha, Stanton. Stanton, can you hear me? Uh-oh. Somehow we lost him. So, time out. We had some technical difficulties, and Stanton, can you hear me? For some reason, you can't hear me. Let me see. Oh, let me see. Two people. Okay, so hang on a second, folks. I'm gonna have to be. I'll come back. Time out. Okay, so now time out. I gotta. We're gonna see. Oh man. Okay, here we go. So oh, wait. I shouldn't have to do that. Stanton, can you hear me at all? Stanton? Okay, time out. I have to see if we can get him back in. Kathleen, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So I just need to bring Stanton in, and we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure. Something's coming through. Not sure if you can hear him or not. Okay, time out. Let me do something else. I'll be right back. Time out. Okay, so we're back. Thank you. Okay. So what's happening is I'm having to call him with Google instead because the rates are 49 cents a minute, and so I just called and found out, and so what I'm doing is calling in via Google instead. And I tried to call in. Well, I'm using a wireless speaker, and I was trying to run both the phone call from my phone and the phone call from my computer into the wireless speaker, and it's not working. So I have what's going to happen is I'm going to put my phone on speakerphone, and then I'm going to have a Stanton coming through on the wireless speaker, and so hopefully the quality may not be as good as it can be otherwise, but I think it's going to work either way, so I think we'll be fine. So it's going to be kind of awkward, but I think we can do it. So hang on a second, time out. Okay. So right now I think he still thinks he's still on the phone with me, and he hasn't hung up, so they're physically going up and telling them to hang up the phone so that I can talk to them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I'm going to call them again right now. Okay. So this is going to be, I've never done this before, but it's the first time for everything.
Thanks for calling Cheddar St. John. My name is Debbie. How may be of service?
Debbie, were you able to get a hold of him yet?
Yeah, I was, and I just made it back to the desk. So 1 second, and I'll put you through to him.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Aloha. Hello, Stanton, and thank you for being here. I apologize. So we're having to do this a little bit differently than I'm used to doing this, and so anyhow, now. Let me see. Kathleen, can you hear Stanton pretty good?
Yes, I can. He sounds good to me.
And the thing is that Stanton, you probably can't hear Kathleen very good at all. Is it safe?
I didn't know she said anything. No, I can't hear her.
Okay. So what I'm going to have to do is paraphrase as we go along when we're talking, and Stanton, she can hear you really good. I can hear you really good, but I have Kathleen on speakerphone on my phone, so we're not going to be able to hear her very good. But we can hear you good, and on Blog Talk Radio, we should be able to hear her pretty good as well. So we're just going to work with it and just go with it. So because I called and found out that the rates are 49 cents a minute to call you over there. So I think it's going to be better if I just do this over the phone. And I don't have a Skype account to call you over there and plug you in that way. So otherwise I would do it that way. But we're just going to go with it, and hopefully everything will come out okay. So again, we have Stanton Friedman all the way out of Canada. Aloha, Stanton.
Hi, I'm in beautiful St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, not far from where I live in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, east of Maine, for those who wonder where that is.
And thank you for being here. And anyhow, just to let you guys know, and we're going to talk to Kathleen and Stanton here in a few minutes. And I apologize about the sound quality. We had some last minute emergencies come up, so we're just kind of working with it. So anyhow, fact, fiction, and flying saucers, the truth behind the misinformation, distortion, and the derision by debunkers, government agencies, and conspiracy conmen by Kathleen Marden and Stanton Friedman, examines the wealth of archival documents that clearly demonstrate this cooperative disinformation effort and refute the false claims made by these professional scoffers. Friedman and Marden set the record straight by examining politically motivated misinformation and presenting the compelling evidence that separates fact from fiction. After being a nuclear physicist for various companies for 14 years, Stanton T. Friedman became, and that's Terry Friedman, became interested in UFOs and lectured about them at more than 600 colleges and 100 professional groups in 50 U.S. states, 10 Canadian provinces, and 18 other countries. He has published more than 90 UFO papers and has appeared on hundreds of radio and TV programs, including Larry King in 2007 and twice in 2008, and many documentaries. He is the original civilian investigator of the Roswell incident and co-authored Crash of Corona, the definitive study of the Roswell incident. Additionally, he is also co-author with Kathleen Marden, Betty Hill's niece, of Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience in 2007. He has provided written testimony to congressional hearings, appeared twice at the UN, and has been a pioneer in many aspects of ufology, including Roswell, Majestic 12, the Betty Hill Mercury fish star map work, and the analysis of the Delphos, Kansas, physical trace case, crash saucers, flying saucers technology, and challenges to the SETI, silly effort to investigate. Okay, and the occultist, likewise, he has spoken at more MUFON symposium than anyone else. Kathleen Marden is a prominent UFO abduction researcher, author, and lecturer with 23 years of experience in the field. She is MUFON's Director of Abduction Research and an experiencer advocate for Starborn support. For 10 years, Kathleen volunteered as MUFON's Director of Field Investigator Training. In 2012, she was the recipient of MUFON's Researcher of the Year Award. And if you want more information on either of these people, on Stanton Friedman, you can go to www.stantonfriedman.com, and that's STANTONFRIEDMAN.com. And then also you can go to www.kathleen-marden.com, and that's KATHLEN-MARDEN.com. And we're going to talk to these people here, Kathleen and Stanton, about fact, fiction, and flying saucers. In the meantime, I want to give a big aloha to all of our underwriters to help make the show happen from week to week, month to month, year to year, beginning with Maha Dikini Lore at www.mahadikini.com. Maha Dikini Lore's life has been a personal journey exploring sexuality and spirituality for over 20 years. She is a certified tantric counselor and tantric healer and a certified mind sound teacher. Maha Dikini Lore is also a graduate of Margot Non's year-long sky dancing facilitator training program, as well as a current member of the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists Club, and a charter member of the Association of Sexual Energy Professionals. She regularly attends trainings and conferences to keep current with the latest research and information on sexual education. And then we have the 90-Day Ascension Journey at www.90dayascensionjourney.com. When you sign up for the 90-Day Ascension Journey, you will be facilitated with defining and redefining your soul true life purpose. You will be assisted with finding out what Ascension means to you. On this journey, you will be provided with tools, techniques, and assistance to empower you to connect and reconnect with yourself, your emotions, opinions, and your mind, body, and spirit. Well, through a universal soul-centered process, you will be going through a lifelong transformation that will allow you to move forward with your endeavors and never look back if you dare. And for those of you that are interested, a few months ago, I literally wrote the supplement, the book for this journey. You can go to spiritualimageproductions.com, spiritualimageproductions.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there and keep abreast of everything that's going on with Andrew, Aloha, myself, and I in Spiritual Image Productions. You can also go to the 90dayascensionjourney.com, the 90dayascensionjourney.com, and there you'll find a gift that's of the book, and you can click on that, which will take you to a page, that will give you more information about the 90-day Ascension journey. You can order it there. You can also order it on Amazon.com and Kindle.com as well. And then finally, we have StarWorks USA, 2016 StarWorks USA UFO Symposium, Art, Music, and UFOs, the Evolution of Human Consciousness at www.starworksusa.com. I want to tell you, I just got back from that conference earlier, literally about 3 hours ago, and that was pretty amazing conference. It was pretty diversified. There was a lot of interesting speakers there, and a lot of stuff, a lot of activity going on. Anyhow, join us for this past weekend for the 6th annual StarWorks USA UFO Symposium, Art, Music, and UFOs, the Evolution of Human Consciousness at the Aquarius Casino Resort in Laughlin, Nevada, from the 11th through the 13th of November, to be hosted by Paula Leopizzi Harris, producer of StarWorks USA, investigative journalist and author. And also, the weekend included a dinner gala, a 2-day buffet, and other speakers including Ron James, Karen Ong, Karen Grisham-Nickel, Mike Barra, Erica Lukes, Jennifer Stein, Paul Davis, Douglas Taylor, Barbara Lamb, Dr. Stephen Greer, Ricardo Gonzalez out of Peru, and Giuliano Falciani out of Italy. So it was a pretty interesting conference if you guys want to check it out for next year and then go from there. In the meantime, now again, we're going to work with this as best we can. Right now, we have Kathleen Marden out of Florida on speakerphone on my phone, and then we have Terry Friedman out of Canada on the speakerphone. So it's going to be a mixed mash of audio, but I think it will work if we just kind of work with it slowly here now. So anyhow, and thank you for both for being here, and I apologize about the audio. Stanton, what I'd like to do, since the audio quality with you is a little bit better than with Kathleen, let's go ahead and start out with you, and then go from there. And what I want to do, if you can just give us a brief bio about who Stanton Friedman is, for our audiences that don't know who you are, where you grew up, what kind of stuff led you to where you're at now, and then how you're at where you're at now, and then we'll go from there. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
All right. Okay. I grew up in New Jersey a long time ago. Spent 2 years at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. 3 years at the University of Chicago, and got my bachelor's and master's degrees in physics in Chicago. Carl Sagan and I were classmates for 3 years. We grew up in adjacent towns in New Jersey, as a matter of fact. And then I spent 14 years in industry working on a wide variety of very advanced, very exciting, eventually canceled nuclear and space system development programs. And some of these were pretty large programs, and I worked for General Electric Aircraft Nuclear Propulsion Department. This is in the late 50s in Cincinnati, Ohio. In 1958, we spent $100 million of government money and employed 3,500 people, of whom 1,100 were engineers and scientists. So it was fascinating work, exciting, got to do experiments in a lot of different places. The idea was to develop a nuclear-powered airplane, which would have the major advantage that it could fly for thousands of hours without refueling. And for those of you who say nonsense, I would point out that the United States Navy has aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered, that can operate for 18 years without refueling, which is pretty remarkable if you're a sea captain. But the program got canceled. I saw the handwriting on the wall. I got our work done. Compact nuclear reactors for space vehicle applications, and also on a study of fusion propulsion for deep space travel. Now, for those who don't know it, almost all the energy in the universe is produced by nuclear fusion in stars. That's how our sun produces its energy. It's also what goes on in H-bombs, hydrogen bombs. And for those who wonder, so who cares about anything nuclear? That's not going to be a big advantage, is it? Yes, it is. Not only because we can have nuclear-powered carriers that can operate for 18 years without refueling, because the amount of energy per pound of fuel, propellant, or whatever you want, is so much greater. To give you an example of that, in World War II, a big bomb was a 10-ton blockbuster. That produced the energy of exploding 10 tons of dynamite. Wow, make a big hole in the ground, all right. The next year, that was 1944. In 1945, we exploded our first nuclear fission device, an atomic bomb, if you will, and that provided the energy of 16,000 tons of dynamite. And 7 years later, in 1952, we exploded Mike. What a name to give a nuclear fusion device. The fireball was 3 miles wide, released the energy of 10 million tons of TNT in one bomb. Now, the Russians outdid that a few years later. One bomb released the energy of 57 million tons of TNT. Wow. Games we're playing here, in other words. Now, I mentioned this not just to say, wow, we nuclear guys have it all over the non-nuclear ones, but to point out that any alien concerned about its own survival and security is going to be concerned about any civilization it finds that has learned the secret of energy production in the stars. Why? Because it can be used to get your enemies where they want to go. Fusion propulsion for deep space travel. I was involved in a study of that in 1962. And to put the bottom line simply, all it takes to go is to have the dough. In other words, if you want to spend the money, and it won't be cheap, you can develop fusion propulsion for deep space travel. You can kick particles out the back end of a fusion rocket that have 10 million times as much energy per particle as they can get in a dumb old chemical rocket. And the point here is that anybody studying how technology evolves knows that progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. The future is not an extrapolation of the past. And I get really disgusted at some of the SETI people, silly effort to investigate, I call it. They seem to think that the future is just an extrapolation of the past.
Right.
And that's nonsense. A laser is not a better light bulb. It produces light, but it's got a heck of a lot more concentrated energy. And anywhere you look, if I were to tell people 50 years ago that I could sit at my desk and be in real-time contact with 1 billion people, the internet they call it, they'd have said I was crazy 50 years ago. But it's true. It doesn't use vacuum tubes. It doesn't use the same kind of communication technology that was used not too many years ago. So you got to be very careful about putting limitations. You can't get here from there. I hear it all the time. Of course, they don't tell you how far there is. And I've seen scientists talk about coming here from other galaxies. What nonsense. Yeah, it's nonsense. What do I care about the local galactic neighborhood? In case you think you're lonely, let me point out that approximately 10,000 stars within 100 light years of here. 100 light years. Now, the galaxy is 100,000 light years across. But I'm saying that just within 100 light years, there are 10,000 stars, and according to the new Kepler spacecraft, there's a remarkable device at finding planets. It's in orbit around the Earth. It goes out and comes back, and is so sensitive that it can pick up planets going in front of stars many light years away from us.
So now, Stanton.
Okay,
go ahead.
That's remarkable.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Just to say that this is the real world, and it's remarkable.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much more beyond that, even that, I you know, that's one of the things that I really got from the conference from this last weekend, is that there's so much out there that we haven't even tapped into yet, that it's pretty out of this world. So now, Stanton, let me ask you this. Let's take a step back. I'll just take a step back real quick. Now, you said you grew up where, again, real quickly?
Linden, New Jersey. That's 18 miles from New York City.
And now, what did your parents do, Stanton?
Well, my mother was a homemaker. My dad worked at American Cyanamid Company for 37 years in Linden, New Jersey.
So we call them home engineers. Your mom was a home engineer, and your dad, and so how did you get involved with the scientific community? I mean, did you always know you wanted to work with science and that kind of thing, or how did that come about for you?
Well, okay. I was a good student. I graduated as valedictorian of my high school class. And I remember this was in 1951.
Okay.
And we were still gaga over nuclear weapons and things like that. And I was impressed with how exciting it was that we were at a time when man was conquering the atom. And so I majored in physics. And my first job was working on radiation shielding for nuclear aircraft reactor systems. And it was exciting because we had money to spend, so I could do a lot of experiments, test some crazy materials like lithium hydride and beryllium oxide and gadolinium hydride and all kinds of weird stuff. And it was intriguing to me because it's such a different world from what I had thought about. In other words, airplanes, Linden had a little airport. Newark Airport was only 10 miles away. But we start talking about nuclear power for aircraft. Wow! That gets to be very exciting. And, you know, submarines, just to give you an example, in World War II, U-boats, German U-boats, could stay under for about a day before they had to come to the surface because they were diesel-powered, and you need air for the diesels. And when Admiral Rickover worked on the Navy nuclear reactor systems, Marines that could go around the world underwater without coming to the surface.
Wow. That's amazing.
And what's important about that is if the Russians knew that if they bombed the United States with nuclear weapons, that the Navy nuclear underwater submarines could retaliate because there's no way to take them out because there's no way to find out where the heck they are.
No kidding.
It had an enormous impact, in other words, the fact that we had nuclear-powered submarines. And it took, I forget, 60 days to go around the world underwater. But remember, it took Ferdinand Magellan, back in 1620 or so, 1520 rather, it took him 3 years for his ship to go around the world. He didn't make it. Some natives stopped him on the way and cut him up. Anyway, so we go from 3 years to 60 days. And now we go around the world now with the space station in 95 minutes.
Wow.
So that's where this idea of progress comes from, doing things differently comes from, that the new ways of doing things give you opportunities that you couldn't even conceive of not too many years ago. It's exciting to be part of that.
Yeah, I know.
So I worked for several different companies, and one of the biggest things was, to get back to that, fission nuclear rockets. There were 3 different programs that most people have never heard of, I guess. Aerojet General had one, Sacramento, California. I worked at Westinghouse Astronuclear Lab in Pittsburgh, and there was Los Alamos Scientific Lab, later Los Alamos National Lab in New Mexico. All of us built nuclear-powered rocket engines that we tested on the ground. But to get an appreciation for that, all the rocket engines were less than 8 feet in diameter. The exhaust gas temperature, they were cooled, funny word to use, with liquid hydrogen. exhaust temperature of that hydrogen, which is the most abundant element in the universe, and the lightest one, those are handy things if you're going to put the exhaust temperature was over 4,000 degrees, and the power levels, the Westinghouse one was 1,100 megawatt. That's Aerojet General was 1,000 megawatts, and Los Alamos was 4,400 megawatts. Now, to give you some idea what that means, Hoover Dam produces 2,000 megawatts, and it's a lot bigger than 8 feet in diameter,
yeah, no,
they believe.
Right.
So it was very exciting when these programs were on. Of course, they were canceled later, and don't ask me why. I'm not going to defend the government's decision not to pursue them. I guess nobody had guts enough. A nuclear third stage on a rocket that you want to take to Mars or send to Mars, you can almost triple the payload compared to a chemical rocket. And I thought we'd have a base on the moon already when I was working on the space program.
Yeah, no kidding.
Back
That's
in the
what I
60s.
said. Exactly. I figured we would have had something there already years and years ago, and because I predicted they were going to start doing vacation packages up there so that they can afford to fund all that, and I'm surprised they don't have that up and going either. But that's the point. So now let me ask you this.
They have leadership. That's missing.
Stanton, let me ask you this: How did you make the transition from doing all this physicist work or service, if you want to call it that, to investigating flying saucers, UFOs, aliens, and so forth?
Oh, well, it was very straightforward. I read a book in 1958, a report on unidentified flying objects by Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, who headed Project Blue Book in the early 50s. It intrigued me. It didn't fully convince me, but I shared it with a neighbor. Charlie was a good engineer, and he was more convinced than I was. And so I moved to California. I lived in a lot of places, and had a good librarian, read a dozen books on UFOs, some of which were trash. And then I discovered, to my total surprise, a copy of Project Blue Book, Special Report number 14. The biggest Air Force study on UFOs done by Project Blue Book, or for Project Blue Book. And it was incredible. They had data on 3,201 UFO sightings. 21.5% couldn't be identified, completely separate from the 9.3% for which there was insufficient information. And I was shocked because Blue Book Special Report 14 wasn't mentioned in any of the other books that I had read. And because the copy that I had from the University of California, Berkeley Library included the press release and a statement by the Secretary of the Air Force, Donald Quarles, what higher authority could there be about what the Air Force was doing? He said, on the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those properly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. I don't like being lied to. And when you say 3%, when the reality is 21.5%, that's a lie, flat out lie. And when you say even the unknowns could have been identified if more data had been available, if there wasn't enough data, the sighting could not be listed as an unknown by definition. Now, the press release had many things wrong with it. One of them was it didn't mention the title of the report. Surely if they had said Special Report 14, some journalist would have said, hey, wait a minute. For 13, we never heard anything about that. But they didn't mention 14 or any other number. Secondly, they didn't say who did the work, so that there was no way a reporter could follow up by calling the author or the organization, Battelle Memorial Institute, which is still around, incidentally, and a major factor in research and development activities. So nobody could call the original guys who did the work. I don't like being lied to, so that motivated me the two major groups at that time, APRO and NICAP, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, to get your newsletters and stuff, talk about it at work, at lunch, you know, brown bagging it and all the rest of that. And then my first, it was kind of funny. Well, it didn't seem funny at the time, but Frank Edwards had a book, Flying Saucers, Serious Business. He was a journalist in Indianapolis. And I was working at that time in Indianapolis for General Motors Allison division on military compact reactors. And I then got a job with Westinghouse and asked Frank, I said, look, I want to go public. You know everybody, but he knew an awful lot of people. Give me some names here in Pittsburgh. Because I figured, being a Westinghouse nuclear physicist, Westinghouse is based in Pittsburgh, in the area anyway, so I was just outside town. And, you know, I want to go public. So Frank gave me some names, including the producer of a television program called, would you believe, Contact. It was a radio program, not a television program.
Now, Stanton, you're saying going public with the lies of this Blue Brook project. Is that what I hear you saying?
No, I'm saying that the reality was very different from what the Air Force press release, which got very wide distribution, said it was. And I decided I wanted to go public to talk about the real data. And Frank knew everybody, so he gave me the name of the producer of a radio show called Contact. It's hard to believe, but that was the name of the show. And I called them, and they said, don't call us, we'll call you. Well, less than a month later, they called me at 6:30. Can I do the 7 o'clock show, please? Somebody had canceled at the last minute. And I've often wondered how many people they called who didn't go on. Anyway, I said yes. I lived close to the station, so I went on. I didn't do things by phone at that time. And I got a lot of attention from the show. I did the show more. And somebody at work at Westinghouse heard me and called me to see if I would give a lecture to her book review club. They were reading Frank's book. And I said, sure. And I did it. My first lecture was in somebody's living room in Pittsburgh. And I did the show again a number of times. And then I'm riding to work one of 2 days with Joanne, Dr. Joanne, who was a supervisor at Westinghouse Astronuclear Lab, where I worked. And I said, boy, I'd sure like to. I lived downtown, as she did, and Astronuclear was out of town. In a little town called Large, honest to God. Anyway, I said, I'd sure like to speak at Carnegie Mellon University. And she said, did you talk to the dean? I said, no, I talked to Dr. So-and-so, and he wasn't interested. She said, Stan, the dean's my husband. He's heard you on the radio. Give him a call. Sure. So I did, and we agreed on a date 3 or 4 weeks later. But it was an afternoon talk, which meant I'd have to take some time off work. And his last question was, how much do you want? I asked for $100, figuring he'd knock me down to 50. It turned out he told me, because I knew his wife, what he was paying the other speakers in the same series, $1,500, $1,700, $1,600. Well, I got my 100, but he was nice enough to write a letter to the agency through which he had booked these other speakers. And that agency, American Program Bureau, booked me at a real winner, the Engineering Society of Detroit. $300 in expenses.
Wow.
Sold out 3 weeks in advance for 1,008 people for a talk.
Wow.
Flying saucers are real, and there were no negative questions.
Nice.
And that impressed the heck out of me.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. So now,
that's how I got involved, and then more lectures came because more people heard me. I was talking to technical groups, frankly, And I was very impressed with their response. I mean, I may buy Japanese cars, but Engineering Society of Detroit isn't a bunch of little old ladies in tennis shoes.
So now, I want to bring in Kathleen here in a few minutes, and we're going to coordinate this a little bit differently than I'm used to because of the audio tech difficulty. But anyhow, so how did you and Kathleen get hooked up with each other, and how did you end up writing this book together? How did that all turn out?
Well, remember that that was the third book we'd written together. It came because of that same radio station in Pittsburgh, KDKA, on which I first appeared. They called me after I'd done the show several times. They called to let me know that Betty and Barney Hill were going to be in town to do a television show. And I had read the book, The Interrupted Journey, and I was quite favorably impressed. And the station not only called me, but they told me where they were staying. So I called them. That was very unusual. And we had dinner together, and I was very favorably impressed. And it was because of them, they got to know me, I got to know them. I think Kathy can probably fill in the rest of the story, that Betty had told her if there's one guy she could trust in the field, was Stan Friedman. So that got us together, and then I don't know where, probably a MUFON conference or someplace like that, we had met, and I'd been at Betty's house and in New Hampshire. And so this wasn't our first book together.
No,
we had done.
Go ahead.
Well, Kathy can tell you the story of that.
Now, when was this that you first met?
Say it again.
When was this that you first met?
I think that we met maybe around in probably the early 1990s.
Early 1990s is what Kathleen says.
That's what I think.
Probably right.
Okay. And again, because of the technology, the tech the way it's going right now. Well, first of all, I want to ask. There's a woman that is a regular on our show. She's a co-host here on Blog Talk Radio Spiritual Production Show. Her name is Marietta, and she was very interested in listening to you speak, Stanton, because she's heard some of your work. So I want to ask her real quick, Marietta, do you have a question for Stanton at this point?
I don't have a question yet. I'm just kind of mesmerized listening.
Okay, so she says
I'm going to be able to stay for the show. I went and signed off my other job, so I can do that.
So she says she's mesmerized by your work and is just patiently just listening. So what we're going to do right now, and what I'm going to do, first of all, we're going to play some music, take a little bit of breather, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to shift the miking a little bit, Stanton, and you may not hear us for a while, for several minutes, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, I don't know. But if we get lost in the woodwork, I'll call back to your hotel, and I'll have them tell you to hang up again, and that we lost you, and then bring you back in that way. Does that make sense to you?
Well, do you want me to hang up now, or
no? Just well, let me see, because I don't know. I have a feeling, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift the Bluetooth on my phone. I'm going to switch it around, and I have a feeling that you may not be able to hear us at all. So if you can't hear us at all, then don't go ahead and hang up, I guess, and then I'll call. Okay. And if we have to call you back in to the hotel, then I'll do that. And in the meantime, we'll work. And then we're going to talk with Kathleen and bring her in for this next part of the show to tell her side of her story of the book and go from there. But right now, and I want to switch the Bluetooth so they can hear her on the speakerphone, so on the wireless speaker, so that so that they can hear well on the Ustream as well, so that when we put this on YouTube, then it'll be better quality. So right now, we're just going to play some music. We're going to send out love and light to people with this music. Let me see it. Let me find something. Time out. Hang on. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is very befitting, and we're not going to be able to play all of it, but a lot of this music is very long-winded. But that's the way it's meant to be. But we're going to play a song called "Winter" by Daniel Paul from his album Four Seasons. Where is it at? Over here. If those of you that are watching me on Ustream, I'm going to show a copy of the album. It's called Ragas of the Four Seasons by Daniel Paul. We're going to send out love, light, blessings, healings of angels of light and love to everybody here on the phone line, to our family and friends, and especially to your wife, who, again, this is part of why we're going through some of the stuff we're going through right now, but especially to your wife, Stanton, and hopefully everything works out well with her.
She's okay. She's in the hospital tonight, but she's well, I talked to her earlier this evening after I had been there all day, and she sounds okay.
So we're going to send out love, light, blessings, angels of light and love to her anyhow, just in case. I want to say this past weekend, I just found out a man that I've been working with for several years, a number of years, a man by the name of Benjamin Krim, just passing. He just passed away about a week and a half ago or so. And I want to send out love, blessings, healings, angels of light and love, not only to him, but all his family and friends, to all the transmission meditation groups that have been vigorously been working with him and supporting him as well, and the service and the cause. I want to send out love, blessings, healings, angels of light and love to the President of the United States and all his family and friends. And I don't know what's going to happen with this new president, if we're going to have a new president. I don't know what, but to all the new leaders that have been elected out there, and all their family and friends and their staff, hopefully we'll be getting into the right direction next year and get on a good foot, and life will be better for everyone on the planet. I also want to send out love, blessings, healing, angels of light, love to all the animals and the plants and the kids and the minerals on the planet, and especially the ones that are needing concern. Anybody else you guys want to add to that? Stan, anybody else you want to add to that?
No, I don't think so.
Kathleen, anybody you want to add to that?
I don't think so.
Marietta?
Yes, I'd like to do for children especially who have terminal diagnosis, and in light of the show tonight, those who've had contact that may be a little stressed over it, or those who aren't stressed over it.
Okay, to all the kids, especially the terminal ones, and that are having a hard time with terminal cancer or whatever. I also want to add to that, everyone else in need concern, we will be back again. This song is called Winter by Daniel Paul from his album Ragas of the Four Seasons. And again, we will be back. Again, Stan, if something happens and we get just enough to send I'll ask your hotel for we're back. This is Andrew Aloha live out of Flagstaff, Arizona with Spiritual Illness Productions on Blog Talk Radio and freeconferencing.com and Ustream, establishing and maintaining relationships to human bodies. Again, we're back with Andrew Aloha live. Tonight we're talking with Kathleen Marden and Stanton and Terry Friedman about their new book called Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers, The Truth Behind the Misinformation, Distortion, and Derision by Debunkers, Government Agencies, and Conspiracy Conmen. So far, we've talked with Stanton Friedman about growing up in New Jersey, I believe that's correct, and then also him becoming a nuclear physicist, and eventually coming across a project, a blue book, and finding all kinds of misinformation and also press releases, and him getting very annoyed that there's no the truth isn't being put out there to the public by these agencies, by these people, and so he went on the circuit himself and started putting out correcting this information in public to the public, and eventually encountered Kathleen Marden and Barney Hill, Betty and Barney Hill story, and so they started meeting with each other and eventually co-authored 3 books so far. Is that correct, Kathleen?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. We met back in the early 1990s, I believe.
Now, Kathleen, you're going to have to speak louder because we can barely hear you.
Is that so? Let me put this mic closer. Is that better?
Yes, but hang on a second. I want to check something to make sure we're on topic. Okay. Stan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So earlier you couldn't hear me before. Is that correct? You couldn't hear nothing? Or could you hear?
No.
Could you?
I could hear you.
Could you hear the music that we just played?
Hear music?
Yeah, you could hear all that.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Kathleen back onto the Bluetooth and we're gonna hear. We're not going to be able to hear you, but even though you can hear us, and then eventually we'll switch back to you, and then towards the end, and then if there's any extra questions, and then we're just going to have to piecemeal it. But anyhow, I'm going to bring Kathleen back in, and we're going to talk with her for a little while, and then go from there. So we'll be back. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. So okay. So Kathleen, we're back. So again, Kathleen, if you can go ahead and just give us a brief bio about where you grew up, how you got involved into what you're doing, and then what led you to writing this book. Go ahead.
My aunt was Betty Hill. And
were you able to change the miking on that? Because we were having a hard time hearing you earlier in your story.
I'm speaking very loud.
Okay, good.
And the mic is next to my mouth.
Okay.
Can you hear?
All right. I think that's going to be barely enough, but if you keep it that way, I think we'll be fine. Go ahead.
Okay. My aunt was Betty Hill. And in September of 1961, she and my uncle were on a vacation to the White Mountains of New Hampshire, to Montreal, to Niagara Falls. And on their way home through the White Mountains, they had their famous close encounter with a UFO where my uncle saw non-human entities on the craft. And they had some physical evidence that they couldn't explain. The craft was very, very close to them, and my uncle feared that they were going to be captured. Well, when they arrived home, my aunt called my mother, Janet Miller. My mother was Betty's younger sister, and I was at home. I overheard the conversation, and that was what got me started in the UFO field. I was 13 years old. Within a few days, I went to Betty's and Barney's house and heard the entire story from them. I looked at the evidence, and along the way, I met most of the investigators on their case. I was fascinated by what had occurred, and I wanted to write, and I did. At a young age, I wrote about their story, but it wasn't published. Yet I loved writing, and when I was in high school, I did have a poem published, and the newspaper had written a profile on me, and that sort of got me started. I wanted to study to be a writer in college, and I started out doing that. But my Aunt Betty Hill talked me out of it. She told me that I would never make a living as a writer, and I should do something practical, like become a social worker. Or and
Go ahead.
exactly. I started out in social work. I earned my degree in social work. I was taking a minor in education, and I got out, and I decided I did not like the practical end of any of this. I was very, very interested in research. I had intended to go to college for my doctorate. It would be a master's and then on to the doctorate. It was all one program. I had a full scholarship. I was an A student. And that was my plan. I was going to do this. And then my teaching assistant was revoked. Not enough money came into the university. They could only give the money to doctoral students. And so I could not go to school, even though I had a full scholarship. I wasn't from a wealthy family. And that was a huge disappointment to me. I began working as a school teacher, and I taught school for many, many years, and always held this interest in UFOs and in my aunt and uncle's abduction. Now, it was probably the mid-1980s when I realized that a lot of the information that I was hearing on television and reading in books and in magazines about Betty and Barney was simply false. And I was driven to tell the truth, to expose the lies. And starting in the early, probably 1990, 1991, I began my work. I began my research. I had children at home at that time, so I couldn't travel. I couldn't speak on the national circuit because I was raising my sons. But I did teach night classes at the local high school on the history of alien abduction. And I enjoyed that very much. So then finally, my children grew up, and by the way, I did go to graduate school part-time as well in that time frame when I was teaching school. But I had met Stanton many years before. I really say I admired his work. He was someone I always wanted to hear. I went to conferences. I always attended his lectures. And I was writing a book about my Aunt Betty. I thought it was going to be a biography of her life. And in the course of doing this, she opened up all of her UFO files to me. I had letters from scientists to Betty. I had the original investigation files. I had the scientific investigation of the evidence. And I had the very nasty letters and the distortion from the disinformants is what I call them, because I later realized that all of these people who called themselves skeptics and were writing about Betty were too intelligent to simply make a mistake. They had an agenda, and that agenda was to disinform the public so that they would have an entirely different idea of what happened to Betty and Barney than what actually did happen. They wanted to assault their character, to make them look like a couple of kooks. Actually, my Uncle Barney had served on the U.S. Civil Rights Commission State Advisory Committee. He had received an award from Sergeant Shriver through the Great Society for the anti-poverty programs that were set up during Lyndon Johnson's inauguration. They were active in politics in the state of New Hampshire. They set up the Rockingham County Community Action Program in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They worked on voters' rights. We were actually invited, the three of us, to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration by the president and went to his inauguration. These were the people that my aunt and uncle were. My aunt was a social worker for the state of New Hampshire, but they were being called kooks. My aunt was being called delusional. My uncle was being called a weak man. I couldn't let that stand. And Betty's biography ended up being captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, because I felt that the truth had to be told. It, fact, had to be separated from fiction. And I did invite Stanton Friedman to join me in that, because Stan was the man who took the star map research that Marjorie Fish did to the public. He had met Marjorie. He found that she was a true scientist and was very impressed with her work. And he found scientists who were willing to vet Marjorie's work. And in the end, the scientists stated that her work was accurate. And this was based upon the star map that my Aunt Betty had sketched as a result of a post-hypnotic suggestion by Dr. Benjamin Steinman. And Marjorie identified the home base for the aliens who had taken Betty and Barney. She said they were from Zeta Reticuli, 1 and 2, or one or the other, or both. There were many lines on the map that Betty looked at, meaning that they traveled back and forth to each other's star systems frequently. They were very close together, and so it would make sense that they would want to go out to the next star system, just as we probably will someday when we develop the technology to do so in a timely manner. We do have the technology to do it now, but we're still exploring our own solar system, except for the telescopes that are looking out at a small amount of space and finding planets on every star. So this is what Stanton did, and I asked Stan to write a couple of chapters in Captured about his work with Marjorie and about Marjorie's findings on the star map, because that took a great deal of research. And I have a background in social science. He has the background in the physical sciences, and so I really wanted him to join me. I was living in New Hampshire at that time with my husband, and he came down and spent a few days with us. He read my manuscript. He looked at my files. We had hours and hours of conversations, and he agreed that he would like to join me in writing that book. It was a bestseller in its category. We were very, very happy with the work that we did, and so we decided to collaborate together on our second book, Science Was Wrong. And each of us wrote 7 chapters in Science Was Wrong. It, again, was about fact versus fiction. The fiction was being disseminated by some very powerful, politically connected scientists who made proclamations of impossibility, and they were wrong. And oftentimes there were social consequences as a result of this. One of my favorites that is actually not in our book But one of the favorites that I wanted to write about, but we had to limit the space in the book, is about the future of computers. The proclamation was made that computers would never be inside anyone's home. There would never be personal computers, because what man would want to build a special room on his home for his wife to have a computer to hold her recipes? And that was the argument at the time. Of course, we know that was very wrong indeed. So we had a lot of fun with that book. We had chapters on medical science, on political science, on space and technology, and we also had a section on the frontiers of science, where we examined academic studies on telepathy, and we looked at UFOs, and we looked at contact as well. And after that was published, we started to talk about what we should write about next. And we came up with this idea that we were both fed up with the false information that was...
With the lies, no kidding.
There was a prominent journalist, Philip Julian Klass, who was the editor for Aviation and Space Technology Weekly magazine, and he was one of the editors and a writer for that magazine. He was the go-to guy for the mainstream media. We wanted to find out what the real story was on him. Was he working for a three-letter agency? I ended up going to the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, and his archival collection was there. Over the next 6 years, I made 3 visits over several days to the American Philosophical Society. Donald Menzel's correspondence files were also there. He was an astrophysicist from Harvard University. You wouldn't think that an astrophysicist would be a debunker, but he was a huge debunker. And he wrote his first book, Debunking UFOs, in 1953. He wasn't as prolific in his radio shows and television shows as Philip Klass. We found that Edward Condon, Dr. Edward Condon, physicist and the director of the scientific study of UFOs at the University of Colorado that commenced in 1966 and ended in 1969 with the recommendation that went to the Air Force, and the Air Force closed down Project Blue Book. As a result of this, what was in part a scientific study, the scientists who participated in this examined some cases in depth, and the findings that they had were very different from what Edward Condon ended up stating at the end. He said, "It is safe to assume that no intelligent life outside our solar system has any possibility of visiting Earth anytime in the next 10,000 years."
Wow! Oh my God!
From a man who has a doctorate in physics. Well,
really?
As we did our research on this, I found a great deal of information in the correspondence files and in the archival records of the Condon Committee that is all explained in our book, Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers, our latest book. It's just jam-packed with information that has never been published before, and we provide the links and we provide the footnotes, so you will know, if you want to look for this information yourself, where you can find it. We have a lot of quotes, but the book is also very easy reading. We tell it in sort of storybook form to make it very, very interesting. That's something that we do together whenever we write a book. I guarantee you it is not dry and boring. So what I found out is that actually, I was talking about Edward Condon. He made the recommendation to McGraw-Hill Publishing Company, to the president of McGraw-Hill, that Philip Klass should be the person that they go to if they want factual information on UFOs, which was just a real line of baloney, and so you
for
would
those
know
of you,
that you would.
For those of you that don't know who Philip Klass or Klass, right?
Yes, Philip Klass.
You that don't know Philip Klass, and in fact, last night we were watching Travis Walton's new documentary that he's done so well with in the film circuit. But Philip Klass, assumably, is a debunker, and he's gone out of his way to he's like one of the major debunkers on the planet, and he's gone out of his way to really harass people. I think is a safe word to use to really demean them and cause them to be belittled and whatever else. Even though apparently he did this to Travis Walton and a number of other UFO experiencers, alien experiencers, and so forth. So just to let you know.
And I actually wrote about this in Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers. I have a half a chapter on Travis Walton, on the truth, and Philip Klass knew the truth, and the lies that he told in order to defame Travis Walton and Mike Rogers and members of the crew, and how he attempted to find the weakest link, the weakest member of that crew, and bribe him to lie about what happened. It goes into a great deal of detail about this. Also, I wrote about the Lonnie Zamora case and how Philip Klass completely changed the truth about a very honest police officer, very good, one of the best historical UFO sightings on record, and his distortion of the information and how that distortion went to the public. Philip Klass is now deceased, but he does have understudies who are carrying on with his work, and the public needs to know that Philip Klass had a pathological disregard for the truth. Let me give you an example.
Go ahead.
I'll explain who Dr. J. Allen Hynek was, just in case anyone in the audience doesn't know. Allen Hynek was the astronomical consultant for Project Blue Book. When he worked as a professor at the astronomy department at Ohio State University. He then went on to work at Northwestern University. He was the director of the observatory there and taught in the astronomy department. And Allen Hynek wrote an article for the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin in 1975. And Philip Klass was absolutely furious that the FBI had published this article by Dr. Hynek. And in the FBI's files, they wrote, in strong terms laced with sarcasm, Klass stated that Hynek is the spiritual leader of a vocal group of believers and kooks who claim that we are being visited by extraterrestrial spaceships. He said the FBI has given its endorsement to a hoax that UFOs are of extraterrestrial origin and to a fraud, Dr. Allen Hynek. Well, fortunately, in this case, the FBI knew who Hynek was, and they stated that Klass was informed that Hynek is a highly respected scientist, recognized by all credible professionals in his field of expertise, who was affiliated with a leading university. They said Klass's attempts to discredit Hynek are totally without foundation. Hynek could scarcely be could have any better scientific credentials. All of his writings and public statements that were examined prior to his publication disclose a meticulously objective and scientific view of the UFO phenomenon. And to that, Klass responded, "He won't be for long." He was attempting to destroy Hynek's reputation. He was attempting to get him thrown out of the university, and he had his little understudy as a student at Northwestern, and that student was attending Hynek's classes and reporting back to class with any damaging information. This student was actually a spy for Klass.
Wow.
And that student is still working today in place of Philip Klass, who is now deceased, still disseminating misinformation, disinformation about UFOs. That's just a little taste of what is in our book. We've talked about many scientists who were defamed by Philip Klass and other scientists. We talk about the concerted effort by these government scientists closely connected to the government, such as I mentioned Donald Menzel. Well, I have to tell you that not only was Donald Menzel an astrophysicist and director of the Harvard Observatory, but Stanton Friedman learned some very interesting information about Menzel when he went to Harvard University. He was going to speak there. And actually, he called Dr. Menzel, invited him to his lecture. And Menzel said to him, "No scientist could believe in UFOs." And,
Wow.
said, "Where did you get that idea from?"
No kidding.
Stan is certainly a highly qualified and credentialed scientist. Well, Stan couldn't understand why Donald Menzel had this anti-UFO attitude, and was also reputed to have been a member of Majestic 12, the secret group that was formed to study UFOs after the Roswell crash. And so Stan actually did go to Donald Menzel's archival collection after Menzel died. He had to get permission from three people in order to do that, and one of them was Menzel's wife. And as he was looking through the files, he discovered a letter between Menzel and John F. Kennedy. And Kennedy and Menzel in this letter had stated to Kennedy, "I can give you more information on this topic when we are properly cleared to one another." Stan found out that Donald Menzel worked for the National Security Agency. He had a top secret clearance, and he had a longer association with an NSA, he stated, than anyone. So Menzel lived a double life, and that is probably the reason for his debunking of UFOs and being such a vociferous debunker of UFOs. We discovered that he was in the works all the way back in the early 50s, trying to disrupt the Air Force's study of UFOs. They had actually found out that 26.94% of the cases, the 1,593 cases they investigated in 1952, were unknowns, meaning that they did not fit into any conventional category.
So now, Kathleen, let me interrupt because we're almost out of time. Real quickly, what did your parents do when you were growing up?
Oh, okay. My father was in business for himself. He was a mason contractor, and
your mother?
My mother was a farmer and a craftswoman.
Okay, so now let me ask you this real quick. Were you ever involved? Did you ever have any experiences with UFOs or aliens yourself?
Yes, I did. When I was a child growing up, my aunt was attempting to vector in a UFO to my grandparents' farm. She was working with a team of scientists trying to do this, and I grew up across the street from my grandparents' farm. A craft landed there. It was seen by my grandmother. I saw the physical trace evidence. It was also seen when it was coming in for a landing by a commercial pilot who was a neighbor of ours. I did have a couple of other close encounters with UFOs as well. So
okay. Okay, so let me get hang on. Let me get back to Stanton real quick. Hang on. Stanton, are you still there?
Yep.
Yeah, Stanton.
Still here.
Did you ever have any encounters with UFOs or aliens?
No.
You never
Sorry,
experienced anything
I
like
spent 14
that?
years chasing neutrons and gamma rays. Never saw one of them either, and they're real too.
And no other paranormal experiences like ghosts or angels or anything?
Unfortunately, no. Never did.
Okay, Stanton.
I got my facts and data. I've been to 20 archives,
Got it.
Quite another matter about UFOs.
So we're all out of time, and I want to thank you, Stanton, for being here. I appreciate that, and blessings to your wife. And then and again, I'm going to bring in Kathleen now. Kathleen, let me see. Hang on a second. Kathleen, time out. Thank you, Kathleen, for being here, and both of you. I appreciate you sharing your time. And again, if you guys need more information, you can go to their website. You have your events and stuff there as well?
it is Kathleen Marden.com and StantonFriedman.com. Our autographed copies of our books are available on our website. We're going to be speaking at the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania MUFON conference on the 19th of November. So if you're listening, I hope you're there.
All right. And thank you both once again. Thank all of you for being here. Have a God-goddess week. Be the love that you are, always have been, and always will be. Aloha.